The emergency signal came through at 400 hours, cutting through the silence of the night shift. Captain Daehyun Kim was already awake, drinking his third cup of coffee in the command room of the battleship Indomitable. He had learned long ago that good captains never really slept in deep space. Something always happened when you closed your eyes for too long. The communication officer, a young woman named Yuna Han, looked up from her screen with wide eyes. Her hands were shaking slightly as she pressed the buttons to clear the message. This was only her second month on the ship, and she still jumped at every unusual signal. "Captain, we have an emergency broadcast from Coalition Command," Yuna said. Her voice was steady despite her nervous hands. "It's marked Priority Alpha. That's the highest level." Daehyun set down his coffee cup and moved to stand behind her station. The blue light from the screens made everyone look ghostly in the dark room. "Put it through." The message was short and desperate. The Coalition's Fourth Fleet had been destroyed at the Korvan system. Destroyed. Not damaged or scattered, but completely wiped out. 300 ships gone in less than 6 hours. The Void Swarm had come in numbers nobody expected, and they had torn through the alien defenses like paper. Admiral Sunmi Kang's face appeared on the main screen. She was the human representative at Coalition headquarters, a position she had fought hard to get for humanity. Her gray hair was usually perfect, but now it looked messy. There were dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she had aged 10 years since the last time Daehyun saw her. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Kang. The Coalition is requesting immediate assistance at the Korvan system. I repeat, immediate assistance. The Void Swarm has broken through the defense line. There are survivors, but they won't last long. Any ship that can reach them within 12 hours should respond." The message ended. The command room stayed quiet for a long moment. Everyone was processing what they had just heard. The Coalition was asking for help. The same Coalition that had treated humanity like primitive children for the past 5 years. The same aliens who refused to share their advanced technology because humans were too aggressive and uncivilized. Lieutenant Hyejin Park was the first to speak. She was the weapons officer, a sharp woman in her late 20s who never missed anything. "Captain, we're the only human ship within range. The nearest other vessel is the destroyer Retribution, but they're 20 hours away." Chief Engineer Minho Choi walked into the command room, wiping grease from his hands with an old rag. He was a big man with a scarred face and gray in his beard. He had kept the Indomitable running through 3 separate engine failures and 2 hull breaches. If anyone could get them to Korvan system, it was him. "I heard the alert," Minho said. "Tell me we're not actually considering this. Those alien bastards have been treating us like dirt since we joined their fancy club. Now they want us to come save them?" Commander Taijin Lee, the second in command, stood up from his chair. He was younger than Daehyun, but more diplomatic. He had always been good at seeing both sides of a situation. "They're asking for help, Minho. Whatever happened before, there are people dying out there. Soldiers like us. Soldiers who wouldn't piss on us if we were on fire," Minho shot back. He wasn't wrong. The Coalition military had made it clear they didn't want human advice or tactics. Humanity's way of fighting was too brutal for their refined sensibilities. Daehyun looked at the star chart on the main display. The Korvan system was 8 hours away at maximum jump speed. They could make it. The question was whether they should. He thought about all the times Coalition officers had looked down on him and his crew. All the meetings where human input was ignored. All the times they were told to wait outside because the real military officers were talking. But he also thought about the oath he took when he became a captain. To protect those who couldn't protect themselves. To stand between danger and the innocent. Those oaths didn't have exceptions for people who were rude to you. "How long to get the ship ready for combat jump?" Daehyun asked. Minho sighed heavily. He knew that sigh meant the captain had made his decision. 2 hours if we push it. I need to bring the reactor to full power and charge the jump drives. But Captain, we're at 60% ammunition. We used a lot on those pirate raids last month. Command hasn't sent our resupply yet. 60% will have to be enough, Daehyun said. He activated the ship-wide intercom. All hands, this is the captain. We have received a distress call from coalition forces at the Korvan system. They're under attack by the Void Swarm and taking heavy casualties. I won't lie to you. This is going to be dangerous. The Fourth Fleet was one of the Coalition's best and they were destroyed. But there are survivors out there, and we're the only ones who can reach them in time. He paused, looking around the command room at his officers. They all looked back at him with serious faces. These were good people. They had been through hell together and they trusted him to make the right call. I know the Coalition hasn't treated us well. I know they think we're primitive and violent. Maybe we are. But we're also the kind of people who answer when someone calls for help. We're going to jump to Corvin system, and we're going to do what humans do best. We're going to fight. All departments, prepare for combat operations. We leave in 2 hours. The command room exploded into activity. Officers rushed to their stations. Yuna started sending messages to every section of the ship. Hyejin pulled up weapons diagnostics and began running system checks. Taijin coordinated with the marine units and fighter squadrons. Dr. Jiwon Song called from the medical bay. She was a calm woman who never seemed worried even when body parts were falling off people. Captain, I'm preparing medical for mass casualties. Should I assume we'll have Coalition survivors to treat? Yes, Doctor. We're going to need room for a lot of wounded, both alien and human. Understood, we'll be ready. 2 hours later, the Indomitable was ready to jump. The massive battleship hummed with power as the reactor fed energy into the jump drives. The ship was old compared to Coalition vessels, built with human engineering that favored reliability over elegance. She was covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. The aliens thought she looked like a flying brick, but Daehyun loved every ugly inch of her. All stations report ready, Captain, Taijin said. Daehyun sat in his command chair and strapped in. Helmsman, initiate jump sequence. Destination, Corvin system. The jump drives activated with a sound like thunder. Space twisted around the Indomitable, and reality bent in ways that made human eyes hurt to watch. The stars stretched into lines, and then everything went white. When the white faded and the stars came back, they were in the Corvin system, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. Dead ships floated everywhere, huge Coalition vessels torn in half, debris fields that used to be destroyers and cruisers. Escape pods drifting with no power, their distress beacons crying out into the void. And in the distance, moving between the wreckage like sharks in bloody water, were the ships of the Void Swarm. Yuna's voice was small and scared. Captain, I'm picking up hundreds of distress signals. There are survivors scattered all over the system. Daehyun leaned forward in his chair, his jaw tight. The Indomitable had entered the battle zone. Now they had to figure out how to survive it. The graveyard of ships stretched as far as the sensors could detect. Captain Daehyun Kim stood at the center of the command room, his hands gripped tight behind his back. He had seen destruction before, but nothing like this. The Coalition Fourth Fleet had been 300 ships strong. Now he was looking at 300 coffins floating in space. Yuna, start broadcasting on all Coalition frequencies. Tell them the human battleship Indomitable has arrived and we're here to help, Daehyun ordered. Lieutenant Hyejin Park was already scanning for threats. Her fingers moved across her console with practiced speed, pulling up threat assessments and tactical data. Captain, I'm reading 17 Coalition ships still operational. They're trying to form up near that gas giant, and I'm detecting Void Swarm activity. Lots of it. They're everywhere. Minho's voice came through from engineering. Captain, our shields are at full power, but I don't like what I'm seeing out there. Those swarm ships ripped through Coalition shields like they weren't even there. Before Daehyun could respond, Yuna received an incoming transmission. Captain, I have High Commander Tulvex of the Coalition forces. He wants to speak with you. Put him on screen. The display showed a tall reptilian alien with golden scales and cold black eyes. Tulvex was famous in the Coalition military. He had won a dozen battles and commanded respect from every species except humanity. The disdain on his face was clear even across species barriers. Human vessel, Tulvex said. His translator made his voice sound harsh and sharp. We did not request your specific assistance. Where are the proper Coalition reinforcements? Daehyun felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. High Commander, we're the only ship that could reach you in time. The nearest Coalition fleet is 16 hours away. We're what you have. Tulvex's expression showed something between disgust and resignation. One primitive human battleship. This is what the mighty Coalition has been reduced to. He looked off-screen at something, Probably his own tactical display. We are implementing Defensive Formation Pattern 7. Stay out of our way and do not interfere with our fleet coordination. High Commander, I need to know what happened here. Daehyun pressed. How did the swarm break through so quickly? That is not your concern, human. Maintain your position and await proper military vessels. Talvex out, the screen went dark. Commander Taejin Lee shook his head slowly. Even now, when they're barely surviving, they won't accept our help. It's incredible. Hyejin was studying her tactical display with a frown on her face. Captain, something's wrong with their formation. They're grouping up near the gravity well of that gas giant. That's a terrible defensive position. If they get pinned there, they'll have nowhere to run. Maybe it's a coalition tactic we don't understand, Taejin suggested. Though he didn't sound convinced, Daehyun moved to stand next to Hyejin, looking at her screen. She was right. The coalition ships were moving into a position that left them vulnerable. Pull up the swarm movement patterns. Show me where they've been over the last hour. Hyejin brought up the data, and suddenly the picture became clear. The swarm wasn't just attacking randomly. They were herding the coalition ships. Every attack had pushed the aliens closer to the gas giant, closer to being trapped. They're being led into a kill box, Daehyun said quietly. The swarm is smart. They're corralling them like cattle. Should we warn them? Yuna asked. Yes, open a channel to Tolvex again. The High Commander's face reappeared, looking even more annoyed than before. What is it, human? We are busy trying to survive. High Commander, you need to break formation and move away from the gas giant. The swarm is hurting you. They're going to trap you against the gravity well. Tolvex's eyes narrowed. You presume to lecture me on tactics? I have fought more battles than your entire species has recorded. We are implementing a proven defensive formation that has succeeded for 3,000 years. 3,000 years against enemies that fought like you did. Daehyun shot back. The swarm doesn't care about your proven formations. Look at your sensor data. Every attack has pushed you closer to that planet. It's a trap. Enough. Tolvex's scales seemed to darken with anger. You will maintain silence and stay out of coalition military operations. This conversation is over. The channel closed again. Taejin let out a frustrated breath. He's going to get them all killed because he's too proud to listen to a human. Daehyun returned to his command chair. Helmsman, take us to position 3,000 kilometers from the coalition formation. Hyejin, weapons ready, all guns. Minho, I want shield power at maximum. Captain, if we move closer, we'll be in the engagement zone, Taejin warned. Tolvex ordered us to stay back. I know what he ordered. But I didn't come all this way to watch people die because of pride. We're going to be ready when things go bad, and they will go bad. The Indomitable moved forward, her massive bulk accelerating toward the coalition formation. The other human ships were sleek and modern, but the Indomitable was built like a fortress that could fly. Thick armor plating covered every surface. Railgun batteries lined her sides. Missile pods clustered around her superstructure like barnacles on an old ship. They didn't have to wait long. The swarm attacked in force 20 minutes later. The swarm ships were organic horrors, looking more like massive insects than spacecraft. They moved in coordinated swarms of hundreds, firing bioplasma that melted through shields and hull plating. The coalition ships returned fire with their energy weapons, bright beams of coherent light that struck the swarm vessels. But there were too many. For every swarm ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. And just as Daehyun predicted, the attack pushed the coalition forces back toward the gas giant. Captain, the coalition left flank is collapsing, Hyejin reported. 3 ships destroyed. The survivors are falling back. Daehyun watched the tactical display. The trap was closing. In minutes, the coalition forces would be pinned against the planet with nowhere to run. Yuna hailed Tolvex again. This time, when the High Commander appeared on screen, his expression was different. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like fear. Behind him, his ship's bridge was filled with smoke and flashing red lights. Human Captain, Tolvex said, and his voice was strained. We require assistance. Immediate assistance. Break formation and follow us, Daehyun ordered. We're going to cut through the swarm line and create an opening for you to escape. That's suicide. You're one ship against hundreds of swarm vessels? High Commander, do you have a better option? Tolvex looked at something off-screen. Another explosion rocked his ship. When he looked back, there was resignation in his eyes. No, we do not. We will follow your lead, Human Captain. Try not to get us all killed. Daehyun allowed himself a small smile. Helmsman, take us into the swarm line. Full speed. Hyjin, prepare to fire all weapons on my command. Target the largest clusters. The Indomitable turned and accelerated directly toward the attacking swarm forces. It was the kind of maneuver that made coalition officers faint. You never charged directly at the enemy. You maintained proper firing distance and used your superior technology to win through precision. But humans had learned warfare in a different school. On Earth, where resources were limited and every battle might be your last, you learned to fight dirty. You learned to get close. You learned that sometimes the only way through hell was straight ahead. Range to swarm line 5,000 kilometers. Hyjin counted down. 4,000. 3,000. All guns, fire. The Indomitable opened fire, and the swarm learned what human weapons looked like. Railguns launched solid metal slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. Missiles streaked out with nuclear warheads. Particle beams designed to punch through asteroid plating swept across swarm formations. The coalition fought with elegant energy weapons. Humanity fought with guns that threw metal and explosives because that's what worked. It wasn't pretty, but it was effective. Swarm ships exploded or were torn in half by railgun impacts. The nuclear missiles created expanding spheres of destruction that vaporized everything nearby. The human battleship carved a path through the enemy line like a knife through flesh. Behind them, the coalition ships followed through the opening, their captains shocked into silence by the brutal efficiency of human tactics. Captain, swarm forces are regrouping, Hyjin warned. They're coming at us from 3 sides. Good, Daehyun said calmly. That means they're not chasing the coalition ships. All power to forward shields. We're going to hold this position. Taijin looked at him with concern. Captain, we can't fight off that many ships alone. Daehyun watched the swarm forces converging on his ship. Then we better make every shot count. The Void Swarm came at the Indomitable from 3 directions at once, their organic ships moving with disturbing coordination. Captain Daehyun Kim gripped the arms of his command chair as the first wave hit. The ship shuddered under the impact of bioplasma fire, but the shields held. Shield strength at 75%. Minho's voice crackled over the intercom from engineering. These bastards hit hard, Captain. Real hard. Lieutenant Hyjin Park was already adjusting their firing pattern. Captain, I'm seeing something interesting. When we hit them with the nuclear missiles, they scatter. The radiation seems to break their formation coordination. Daehyun filed that information away. Every piece of data about the enemy was valuable. Focus nuclear weapons on the largest groups. Break up their attack formations before they can concentrate fire. The Indomitable wasn't fighting like a coalition ship. There was no elegant maneuvering or careful positioning. The human battleship sat in space like an angry fortress, turning slowly to bring different weapon batteries to bear. When swarm ships got close, point defense guns tore them apart. When they tried to mass for a concentrated attack, missiles broke up their formations. Commander Taejin Lee was coordinating with the coalition ships that had escaped. Captain Tolvex is requesting our tactical plan. His ships want to support us. Tell them to stay back and protect the wounded ships. We're going to do something they won't like. What's that, sir? We're going to let the enemy get close. The command room went quiet for a moment. Yuna looked back from her communication station with wide eyes. Even Hyjin paused in her targeting solutions. The one rule that every space navy followed was to keep the enemy at distance. Your shields were strongest at range. Your weapons were most accurate at range. Nobody let the enemy close to point-blank range, nobody except humans. Helmsman, cut main engines. Let us drift, Daehyun ordered. Hyjin, hold fire on the railguns. Save them for when the swarm gets close. Minho, reroute power from the rear shields to forward and port shields. Captain, that will leave our back exposed, Taejin protested. I know, but we're not running, so we don't need rear shields. Give me every bit of power you can on the sides where they're attacking. In engineering, Minho was already working. You're crazy, Captain. But okay, rerouting power now. Just remember, if they circle behind us, we're dead. The Indomitable seemed to slow down, appearing wounded and vulnerable. The swarm ships sensed weakness and pressed their attack. They came closer, their bioplasma weapons firing constantly. The shields flared and sparked under the assault, but they held. Range decreasing, Hyjin counted. 2,000 kilometers. 1,500. 1,000. Hold, Daehyun said calmly. 500 kilometers, Captain. They're right on top of us, now. All railguns fire at will. The railguns were humanity's answer to energy shields. When other species developed energy barriers that could deflect or absorb energy weapons, Humans went back to basics. They built guns that threw solid metal. No energy to deflect, just mass and velocity. Simple physics that didn't care about advanced technology. At point-blank range, the railguns were devastating. The metal slugs punched through swarm ships like they were paper. Each slug carried so much kinetic energy that it created an explosion when it hit. Ships didn't just break apart, they vaporized. The swarm formation dissolved into chaos. They had expected the human ship to try to run or maintain distance like the coalition vessels. They hadn't expected it to turn into a close-range brawl. In seconds, dozens of swarm ships were destroyed or crippled. "Target the command organisms," Daehyun ordered. "Hyejin, you said the nukes disrupted their coordination. That means they have some kind of central control. Find the ships that are directing the others and kill them." Hyejin's fingers flew across her console. "I'm seeing larger bioships hanging back from the main attack. They match the profile for command vessels. Locking targeting solutions now." The missiles streaked out, their nuclear warheads turning the void into temporary suns. When the light faded, the swarm attack had lost its coordination. Ships scattered in all directions, no longer moving as a unified force. From the coalition forces watching at a safe distance, High Commander Tolvex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His scales had gone pale. "They're fighting at knife-fighting range. In space combat, this is insanity." His tactical officer, a younger reptilian named Kevrin, shook his head slowly. "But it's working, sir. The swarm isn't adapted to this kind of combat. They're used to enemies that keep their distance and fight with precision. The humans are just brawling with them." Aboard the Indomitable, the celebration was short-lived. Yuna received a priority alert from the sensors. "Captain, the swarm is pulling back. They're regrouping at the edge of the system." "Casualties?" Daehyun asked. Dr. Ji-won Song's voice came through from medical. 17 wounded, 3 critical. I need Minho to reduce the artificial gravity in Medical Bay 2. One of my patients has a crushed spine. Minho, handle that. What's the ship's status? The chief engineer's response was gruff. Shields are at 40% and recharging. We took some hull damage on decks 7 and 8. Nothing critical, but we're venting atmosphere from 3 compartments. I've sealed them off. Weapons are at 60% ammunition remaining. The railguns are eating through our metal slugs like candy. Captain Jamin Ryu called from the marine deck. "Captain, my boys are suiting up. If those swarm bastards try to board us, we'll be ready." Daehyun hadn't even considered boarding actions. The coalition species never boarded enemy ships. It was considered too primitive, too barbaric. But humans had learned to fight in every environment, including inside enemy vessels with nothing but rifles and determination. "Good thinking, Captain Ryu. Keep your Marines ready. Hyejin, what's the swarm doing?" The weapons officer studied her displays with a frown. "They're doing something strange, Captain. They're gathering around what looks like a larger bioship. It's huge, easily 10 times the size of our battleship." A new voice suddenly filled the command room. It wasn't coming from the communication system. It was coming from everywhere at once, resonating through the ship's hull itself. The voice was a chorus of thousands speaking as one, and it made everyone's skin crawl. "Humans, we are the Nexus. We speak for the swarm. Why do you resist? All life joins the swarm eventually. Resistance causes only pain." Yuna's hands shook as she tried to trace the signal. "Captain, I can't locate the source. It's like they're broadcasting directly into the ship's structure." Daehyun stood up from his command chair. "This is Captain Daehyun Kim of the human battleship Indomitable. We resist because that's what humans do. We've been resisting extinction for our entire history. You're just another thing trying to kill us." The Nexus voice seemed almost amused. "Curious. Most species beg or bargain. The coalition species speak of honor and civilization as they die. But you speak of resistance as if it is simple, as if survival is ordinary." "For humans, it is ordinary," Daehyun replied. "We've survived ice ages and plagues. We've survived wars where we killed millions of our own kind. We've survived living on a planet that tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways. You think you're special because you're strong? We grew up fighting things stronger than us. It's what we know." There was a pause. The Nexus seemed to be considering this. "You are different from the others. We will study you. We will learn how you resist, and then we will consume you." The presence faded from the ship. Taejin let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That was disturbing. "They can communicate through the ship's hull? Add it to the list of things we need to figure out," Daehyun said. He looked at Hyejin. That large bioship? Can we kill it? Hyejin ran calculations on her screen. Maybe. But we'd have to get close, and it's protected by at least 100 smaller ships. We'd take massive damage, possibly critical damage. Before Daehyun could respond, Yuna received another transmission. Captain, it's Admiral Sunmi Kang. She's transmitting from Coalition headquarters. Admiral Kang appeared on the screen. She looked exhausted but determined. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her uniform was crisp despite the long hours. Captain Kim, I've been monitoring the situation. The Coalition Council is in emergency session. They're arguing about whether to authorize the use of antimatter weapons. Antimatter weapons were banned by Coalition law. They were considered too dangerous, too destructive. The Coalition fought their wars with rules and limitations. They believed in civilized warfare, where you could fight and still maintain dignity. Humans thought that was stupid. When something was trying to kill you, you used every weapon you had. Admiral, if they authorize it, how long until weapons arrive? Daehyun asked. That's the problem, Captain. The nearest antimatter weapons are 12 hours away. The Council is debating whether to even allow their use. Half of them think it would make us no better than the swarm. Minho's voice cut in over the intercom. Those idiots are willing to die rather than use effective weapons. No wonder they're losing. Admiral Kang nodded grimly. That's why I'm calling. Captain, there's a Coalition superweapon in the Corvin system. It's built into that stellar anomaly near the gas giant. The Coalition deactivated it 300 years ago because they deemed it too destructive. Captain Daehyun Kim stood in the center of his command room, looking at Admiral Sunmi Kang's face on the main screen. The weight of the decision pressed down on him like a physical force. Behind him, his crew waited in silence. Outside the ship, the Void Swarm was regrouping for another attack. Admiral, what's the timeline if we go through with this? Daehyun asked. Admiral Kang pulled up data on her end. The stellar disruptor needs approximately 30 minutes to power up once activated. You'll need to defend the anomaly during that time. The swarm will figure out what you're doing and throw everything they have at you. Then someone has to deliver an antimatter explosive to the anomaly to trigger the chain reaction. Someone, Daehyun repeated. You mean a suicide run? Yes, Captain. I'm sorry. There's no way to deliver the explosive and escape the blast radius. Minho's voice came through the intercom. Captain, I've been listening. If we're doing this crazy plan, I volunteer to fly the delivery ship. I'm old. These kids have their whole lives ahead. Belay that, Minho, Daehyun said firmly. Nobody's volunteering for anything yet. Admiral, do we even have an antimatter explosive? You do, Admiral Kang said. The Indomitable has a prototype antimatter warhead in your weapons bay. It was loaded 3 months ago for testing but never officially authorized. The Coalition doesn't know you have it, Taejun's eyes widened. We've been carrying an unauthorized antimatter weapon for 3 months. That's enough to get us court-martialed. Only if we survive, Hyejin muttered. Daehyun walked to the main display and studied the tactical situation. The stellar anomaly was located between the gas giant and the swarm's regrouping position. To reach it, they'd have to go through the enemy fleet. And once they started powering up the disruptor, every swarm ship in the system would come for them. How many Coalition ships are still operational? Daehyun asked. Yuna checked her sensors. 17 ships capable of combat. Another dozen that can limp away but can't fight. Not enough, Daehyun said. Even with our help, 17 Coalition ships can't hold off that entire swarm fleet for 30 minutes. Admiral Kang's face showed frustration. I know, Captain. That's why I'm calling in reinforcements. I've ordered every human ship within range to jump to your position immediately. The destroyer Retribution and 2 escort frigates will arrive in 40 minutes. That's 10 minutes too late, Hyejin pointed out. I know, Admiral Kang said again. You'll have to hold for the first 20 minutes alone. Then the cavalry arrives. Daehyun made his decision. Send us the activation codes for the stellar disruptor. We're going to do this, but I'm not sacrificing my ship if I can help it. We'll find another way to deliver that warhead. Captain, there isn't another way, Admiral Kang started to say. There's always another way. We just have to be creative. Kim out. He closed the channel and turned to his crew. All right, people. We're about to do something incredibly stupid. Helmsman, plot a course to the stellar anomaly. Best speed. Hyejin, I want constant firing solutions on any swarm ship that gets within range. Minho, how fast can you prep the antimatter warhead for deployment? 15 minutes if I have help. 20 if I don't. Take whoever you need from damage control. Yuna, contact High Commander Tolvex. Tell him what we're planning and ask if his ships can support us. Yuna's fingers moved across her console. A moment later, Tolvex appeared on screen. The reptilian commander looked even more exhausted than before. His golden scales were dulled with ash and stress. Captain Kim, I understand you have a plan. We're going to activate the stellar disruptor and use it to destroy the swarm fleet, but we need your ships to help us hold the line while it powers up. Tolvex was quiet for a long moment. The stellar disruptor. The weapon my people deemed too terrible to use, and you want to activate it. Your people deemed it terrible 300 years ago when they weren't facing extinction. Times change. Indeed they do. Tolvex looked off screen at something, probably consulting with his officers. Very well, Captain. My ships will support you, but I must ask, how do you plan to escape the blast? The disruptor's range will engulf everything in the system. Working on that part, Daehyun said. Just give us 30 minutes. You humans are either the bravest species I've ever encountered or the most insane. Perhaps both. Tolvex out. The Indomitable began accelerating toward the stellar anomaly. Behind her, the 17 coalition ships formed up in a defensive formation. They were all damaged, all running on reserves and desperation, but they followed the human battleship because it was the only plan they had. The swarm noticed their movement immediately. The massive bioships began moving to intercept, bringing hundreds of smaller vessels with them. The Nexus voice returned, filling the Indomitable's hull with its disturbing chorus. Humans, you move toward the old. Weapon, you cannot activate it. We will stop you. We will consume you. Your resistance is noted. Your extinction is assured. You talk too much, Daehyun muttered. He activated the ship-wide intercom. All hands, this is the captain. We're heading into the biggest fight of our lives. The swarm is going to throw everything at us. Our job is to survive for 30 minutes. Just 30 minutes. Then reinforcements arrive and we finish this. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But fear is just your body getting ready to fight. So let's use it. Show these bastards what happens when you corner a human. All stations combat ready. Throughout the ship, crew members secured themselves at their stations. In the medical bay, Dr. Jiwon Song prepared her equipment for mass casualties, her hands steady despite the fear in her eyes. In the marine deck, Captain Jaemin Ryu and his soldiers checked their weapons and sealed their armor. In engineering, Minho and his team worked frantically to prepare the antimatter warhead, knowing that one mistake would vaporize them all. The Indomitable reached the stellar anomaly with the swarm closing in fast. The anomaly was beautiful in a terrible way. It looked like a wound in space, a place where reality twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. Ancient coalition technology ringed it, deactivated monuments to a more violent age. Yuna, transmit the activation codes, Daehyun ordered. The young communications officer's fingers shook slightly as she entered the codes Admiral Kang had sent. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ancient technology began to wake up. Lights flickered on structures that had been dark for centuries. Energy began to flow through systems that hadn't operated in longer than some species had existed. Activation successful, Yuna reported. The disruptor is powering up. Estimated time to full charge 32 minutes. Close enough. Helmsman, position us between the anomaly and the swarm fleet. Hidden weapons free. Kill anything that gets close. The swarm attacked with everything they had. Hundreds of bioships swarmed toward the anomaly, firing their bioplasma weapons in a constant barrage. The Indomitable stood in their path like a castle wall, her guns blazing. The coalition ships spread out in a defensive line, adding their firepower to the human battleships. Energy beams and railgun slugs filled the space between the defenders and attackers. Ships exploded on both sides. The void lit up with destruction. Shield strength at 50%, Minho reported. Hull breaches on decks 4, 7, and 9. Sealing compartments. A swarm bioship broke through the defensive line and slammed into the Indomitable's port side. The impact sent everyone stumbling. Red lights flashed across every console. We've been boarded. Captain Ryu's voice came through urgently. Swarm organisms are inside the ship. Deck 6 through 8. Marines responding. Daehyun heard the sound of gunfire through the intercom. Human weapons against alien biology. Ryu, hold them. Don't let them reach engineering or the bridge. Copy that, Captain. They're ugly bastards, but they die when you shoot them enough. Minutes crawled by like hours. The Indomitable and her coalition allies fought with everything they had. Ships died on both sides. The defenders were being pushed back meter by meter. Time remaining? Daehyun asked. 23 minutes, Yuna answered. A coalition cruiser exploded off their starboard side, torn apart by concentrated swarm fire. Another one went dark, her power failing. They were being overwhelmed. Then something changed. The tactical display showed new contacts jumping into the system. Human ships. The destroyer Retribution appeared first, followed by 2 frigates. They were early. A new voice came through the communications. This is Commander Kyungsoo Park of the Retribution. Sorry we're late to the party, Captain. Admiral Kang told us to push our engines past safety limits. We burned out half our systems getting here, but we made it. Kyungsoo had been Daehyun's student at the Naval Academy. He was young, aggressive, and brilliant. Seeing his ship appear was like a weight lifting off Daehyun's chest. Good to see you, Commander. We need you to take pressure off our port side. The swarm is concentrating there. Understood. Retribution moving to engage. Let's show these bugs how humans fight. The fresh human ships tore into the swarm fleet with full weapons and shields. They fought with the same brutal efficiency as the Indomitable, getting close and hitting hard. The pressure on the defenders eased slightly, but it wasn't enough. The swarm kept coming. For every ship they destroyed, more appeared. Captain Daehyun Kim watched on his tactical display as the destroyer Retribution moved toward the stellar anomaly. Commander Kyungsoo Park's ship was trailing plasma from a dozen hull breaches, her shields flickering and failing. She looked like a wounded animal limping toward its final stand. Kyungsoo, there has to be another way, Daehyun said, though he knew there wasn't. Captain, you always told us that good officers make hard choices. This is my hard choice. Taking the Retribution in now. Tell my family I did my duty. The young commander closed the channel. His ship accelerated toward the anomaly. All remaining power diverted to engines and guidance systems. The swarm realized what was happening and threw everything at the Retribution. Bioplasma fire struck the destroyer from all sides, tearing through her failing shields and ripping into her hull. But the Retribution kept going. Even as sections of the ship broke away, even as fires burned through multiple decks, Kyungsoo guided her forward. The antimatter missile launched from her tubes, and the destroyer moved alongside it, her remaining sensors providing guidance corrections. Stellar disruptor at full charge, Yuna reported quietly. The anomaly is ready. All ships emergency jump preparation, Daehyun ordered. Get as far from this system as possible, now. The coalition vessels didn't need to be told twice. They engaged their jump drives and began disappearing from the system. Even High Commander Tolvex's damaged flagship managed to activate its emergency jump systems. The Indomitable started her own jump sequence, but Daehyun kept his eyes on the tactical display. He watched the Retribution guide that missile into the heart of the anomaly. He watched his former student complete his final mission. The missile struck the anomaly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality broke. The antimatter explosion was already massive, but when it interacted with the stellar disruptor's energy field, something catastrophic occurred. The anomaly, which had been stable for millions of years, became violently unstable. It began pulling in energy from the surrounding space, from the very fabric of reality itself. And then it exploded outward in an expanding sphere of destruction. Jump now! Minho screamed from engineering. The Indomitable jumped just as the shockwave reached her position. Space twisted, and the battleship disappeared into hyperspace. Behind them, the entire Corvin system became a furnace. The Void Swarm fleet tried to escape, but they were too slow. The expanding sphere of energy caught them. It wasn't just an explosion. It was a fundamental breakdown of physical laws. Ships didn't just explode, they ceased to exist, their matter converted directly into energy. The Nexus, that vast intelligence that had spoken so confidently, screamed. It was a sound of thousands of minds dying at once, a chorus of terror and disbelief. And then it was silent. The Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace 3 light-years away. The command room was quiet, except for the sound of damaged systems and warning alarms. Everyone was alive. Everyone except the crew of the Retribution and the Coalition forces who hadn't been able to jump in time. Casualty report, Daehyun said quietly. Dr. Jiwon Song's voice came through, sounding exhausted. 47 wounded, 12 critical. We lost 8 crew members during the boarding action. Captain Ryu and his Marines stopped the swarm from reaching critical systems, but it cost us. I'm doing what I can for the survivors. Ship status? Minho's report was grim. We're a mess, Captain. Hull breaches on 8 decks. 2 of our railgun batteries are completely destroyed. Shields are operating at 30%. We're venting atmosphere from multiple compartments. It'll take months of repair work to get us back to full operational status. But we're alive. The old girl held together. Yuna was crying quietly at her station. She had been monitoring the Retribution's final moments. Captain, I need to send notifications to Commander Park's family, and to the families of the crew we lost. Later, Yuna. First, I need to know if we actually stopped them. Sensors, full system scan. Are there any swarm ships left? The sensors swept across space, searching for any sign of the void swarm. Minutes passed. Finally, Hyejin looked up from her console with something like relief on her face. Sensor sweep complete, Captain. I'm reading no swarm biosigns within scanning range. I'm also picking up debris fields that match swarm ship composition. Whatever that explosion did, it destroyed them completely. And the Coalition survivors? Reading 10 Coalition ships that made successful jumps. They're scattered across nearby systems but intact. High Commander Tolvex is among the survivors. A communication request came through. It was Admiral Sun Mi Kang, transmitting from Coalition headquarters. When her face appeared on the screen, she had tears running down her face. Captain Kim, I've been monitoring the sensor networks. The swarm fleet is gone. You did it. You actually did it. She paused, wiping her eyes. I've received casualty reports. The Retribution and 2 frigates lost. 347 human personnel killed in action, plus another 200 Coalition casualties from ships that couldn't jump in time. The weight of those numbers settled over the command room. 547 people dead. The Retribution's entire crew of 98. Commander, Kyungsoo Park, who should have taken command of his own battleship next year. All gone. What about the Coalition Council? Daehyun asked. Are they going to court-martial us for using the stellar disruptor? Admiral Kang almost smiled. Captain, the Coalition Council has been in emergency session for the past hour. Half of them are arguing about whether what you did was legal. The other half are drafting a proposal to give humanity full military command of the Coalition forces. What? You heard me correctly. The Coalition has realized something important today. They've been fighting the swarm with rules and limitations, trying to maintain their civilized standards. You showed them that sometimes survival requires you to fight without rules. The Velrathi Military Command has officially requested that human officers be assigned to retrain their forces in what they're calling unconventional warfare tactics. Taejin shook his head in disbelief. They want us to teach them how to fight dirty. They want us to teach them how to win, Admiral Kang corrected. The Coalition has been losing this war because they've been too civilized to do what's necessary. Today, Captain Kim, you showed them that honor is meaningless if you're dead. Another communication request came through. High Commander Tolvex appeared on a split screen next to Admiral Kang. The reptilian officer looked different than before. The arrogance was gone from his eyes, replaced by something that looked like respect. Captain Kim, I owe you an apology. When you arrived, I treated you and your species with contempt. I believed humans were primitive, barbaric, unsuited for civilized warfare. He paused, his scales shifting color slightly. I was wrong. Your tactics saved my fleet. Your sacrifice destroyed an enemy we could not defeat. In my culture, there is a ceremony we perform to honor warriors who have proven themselves in battle. I would like permission to perform this ceremony for you and your crew. Daehyun was tired. He was grieving for the people he'd lost. He didn't want ceremonies or honors. But he also understood that this moment was important. The Coalition was finally seeing humanity as equals. Permission granted, High Commander. But I want the same honors extended to Commander Park and the crew of the Retribution. They're the ones who really won this battle. It will be done, Tolvex said solemnly. I have also submitted an official report to the Coalition Military Command. I have recommended that human tactical doctrine be studied and implemented across all Coalition forces. We can no longer afford to fight with one hand tied behind our backs. After the communications ended, Dae-hyun sat back in his command chair. Around him, his crew was working to keep the ship functional. They were exhausted, wounded, and grieving, but they were alive. "Captain," Yuna said softly, "we're receiving transmissions from Earth. News of the battle has reached home. They want to know if we're okay. Tell them we're coming home. It might take us a while with the damage we've taken, but we're coming home." Minho's voice came through the intercom. "Captain, I've got some of the non-critical repairs done. We can limp to the nearest coalition station for emergency work. But I need to tell you something." "Go ahead, Minho." "The crew has been talking. We lost friends today, good people, but they're saying it was worth it. We saved maybe billions of lives. We showed the galaxy that humanity deserves respect. Commander, Park, all the Marines we lost fighting that boarding action, the crew members who died keeping this ship running, they didn't die for nothing." Dae-hyun felt his throat tighten. "No, they didn't die for nothing. They died doing what humans do best. They died standing between danger and those who couldn't protect themselves. They died fighting." Over the next few days, as the Indomitable limped toward the nearest repair station, reports came in from across coalition space. The Void Swarm's advance had stopped completely. Without the central fleet that had been destroyed at Corvin's system, the remaining swarm forces were scattered and disorganized. Coalition forces, now adopting more aggressive human tactics, were pushing them back for the first time in years. The ceremony that High Commander Tolvex had promised took place at the Coalition military headquarters. Captain Dae-hyun Kim stood in his dress uniform, still showing signs of the battle.